Chapter 11 Messes of Men Part 2 June 1979. There's so much stuff packed in his head, Regulus is mildly concerned it might actually explode. Potions, defense against the dark arts, charms, transfiguration. He feels like a first year all over again, learning magic he would never even thought of. His pre-Hogwarts education might have been rigorous, but it had its limits. He remembers his awe when he became a first year, and suddenly there were hexes and jinxes and curses, all different sorts of spells with different movements of his wand, different intonation if you wanted to get it right. It felt like learning to walk again, even though he'd been walking for as long as he could remember. There was magic, and then there was magic. Newts are the same nightmare, but worse. So much worse. There is no awe anymore. The innocence of his first year is gone. In its place, there is only exam anxiety. Even his awes weren't this bad. He's witnessed more than a few fellow seventh years break down in the library, in the Great Hall, and even in random corridors. Sometimes he will be walking, minding his business with a book opened in one hand, and hear the ear-piercing wail of a girl who just can't take it anymore. I don't want to be an horror. I just want to die. A few years ago, he thought the seventh years were dramatic. Now, he understands. And because newts aren't hard enough on their own, Regulus is getting worse. He's constantly struggling to make it to the end of the day without collapsing and coughing up petals. As far as he can tell, there's no pattern to his bouts. It adds a layer of panic that's not helping matters. He never knows when a fit will overcome him, and hiding his condition from his friends is becoming harder by the hour. Just last week, he was sitting in the library with Pandora, who was once again cross-legged on the table, and Evan, who sat just across from him, when Barty waltzed in, a pep in his step because his exams finished 2 weeks ago. Without N.E.W.T.-level curses, he's breezing through the end of his last year. Regulus watched out of the corner of his eye as Barty dropped himself over Evan from behind, nibbled at his ear, muttering low under his breath. Evan turned cherry red at the high points of his cheeks and hissed, "Not here!" To which Barty responded, "The stacks then?" Inexplicably, Regulus's throat tickled. The damn cough building. He had to scramble out of his seat and run to a deserted area near the restricted section to let the petal fall from his lips. In the weeks that have passed since Slytherin's final Quidditch game of the year and the party he refuses to discuss unless forced, he's managed to fill his second jar and now requires a third. The full flower still sits in the second on top of all the petals, alone. There hasn't been another. He's not sure if it worries him or eases his anxiety. Each time he coughs up another petal, he tucks it in the pocket of his robes and waits until Evan and Barty go to sleep before pulling out his third jar. The other night, when the two of them disappeared off to their special room, Regulus set all 3 jars on his bed and counted until a chill settled deep in his bones. There are 108 petals now, plus 1 full flower. This doesn't include the flood of them he vomited all over the Potter's bathroom floor. If he had been able to save them, he's sure it would have made the count well over 200. 108 salvaged petals since last August. Lately, he adds at least 2 each day. More often than not, it's 3 or 4. He's become pretty good at hiding them too. He can cough into his palm in public, spit the petal out into his hand, and carry on a conversation as though there's nothing at all amiss. If it weren't for the fevers and the exhaustion, he might be able to hide this completely. Madame Pomfrey seems to know there's more to this than he shares with her. She gives him a skeptical look each time he finds himself in the infirmary, sheepish as he requests another pepper-up potion. They help with the fevers, he's come to realize. His skin might be hot to the touch, and sometimes he breaks out into a cold sweat, but the mental effects ebb with each pepper-up he swallows. I just have to get through exams, he tells her the second week of June. I only have 2 more. Nastily exhausting indeed, Madame Pomfrey mutters with a shake of her head. No need to work you all this hard. Just last week I had to send a girl home because she practically convulsed any time someone mentioned the words valerian root. Professor Slughorn accepts too much of you all. We need them. The best jobs require them. Madame Pomfrey frowns. She pauses with her hand in a small paper bag full of pepper-up vials, all of them for Regulus. Sure, but you want to play Quidditch. You don't need N.E.W.T.s to play. But what if Quidditch doesn't work out? What if I'm injured in the first season and can never play again? Oh, don't have that attitude or you won't even make it through tryout. You're an incredible flyer, Mr. Black. You will make the team just fine and never need to worry about charms or potions or any of this nonsense ever again. She passes him the paperback with a gentle smile. Just make sure and send me and Minnie tickets every now and again, yes? Minnie? Madame Pomfrey blushes, which is not a thing Regulus thinks he's ever seen her do. Ah, yes, Professor McGonagall. We're friends. I call her Minnie, but don't tell the school. If a rumor spreads, I will know exactly who the source is. Of course, not a word. His last N.E.W.T.s are charms and potions, the hardest yet. He manages charms fine, though his panic spikes in the middle when he feels a slight tickle in his throat. Not here, he thinks. Not now. By some miracle, the tickle subsides, and he's able to finish without a problem. It's only after, when he's washing his hands, that the flood comes. It's not as bad as the day in the Potter's bathroom, but it's at least halfway there. Dizzily, he remembers he's in the 3rd floor toilets. Public toilets, open to the student body. Shit. He scrambles to collect the petals before someone walks in, head buzzing with the fear and ache that have settled in him. Not here, not here, not here. That coughing fit is bad enough that he fills the rest of his 3rd jar with petals and has to charm a 4th to give the few remaining ones somewhere to go. The sight of all 4 jars in a neat row, purple, yellow, and white, blinking at him behind the glass, is enough to make him sick to his stomach. He spends the rest of the afternoon curled up on his bed, not sleeping but exhausted just the same. His potions exam is a nightmare. He doesn't get a wink of sleep for days beforehand, runs out of pepper-up just hours before he's meant to take it, and his fever spikes as he walks into the exam halls. He manages to sit the paper fine, but the practical portion of it is regrettable to say the least. The fog in his brain makes him forget more than a few ingredients for the Wolfsbane potion. It's not even recognizable by the time he's finished, and he accidentally ends up making a Mandrake restorative draw instead of the draw of living death. Impressive, says the exam panels, but not what we asked for. Regulus wants to die on the spot from mortification. He's supposed to be good at this, damn it. But he doesn't have much room for self-flagellation or explanation. He sways on his feet, and a cough builds up in his throat. He doesn't dare open his mouth. When he's finally excused from the practical, he sprints fast as his legs can carry him to the nearest bathroom, locks the door behind him, and vomits another flood of petals on the floor. This time around rivals the Potter's bathroom. There are petals everywhere, all around him, crushed underfoot and clinging to damp tiles. The entire room spins as Regulus scrambles to collect them, shoving them in extra pocket he's charmed onto all of his robes for this exact scenario. By some miracle, he manages to gather them all. It's enough to fill the fourth jar and half of a fifth. Regulus stares at them, lying there side by side on his bed, and drops his head in his hand. What's happening to me? Regulus's birthday is on the 25th of June. It's a few days before the end of term feast, and he realizes with some amount of melancholy that this is the last birthday he will ever celebrate here in the walls of Hogwarts. He doesn't want it to be a big affair. He never does. The attention a birthday brings makes him itchy, and he would much rather spend it like this. In his room, with Evan and Barty leaning against the footboard of Barty's bed, and Pandora leaning against him. There is a small cake on a plate on the floor. The words, "Happy 18th birthday," written in sloppy frosting. The house elves weren't thrilled about our visit, Evan muses, nodding at the cake. But they helped, and they let us use some of the leftover frosting they had. Hope it tastes all right, Pandora mumbles, poking a finger into the chocolate frosting. Sometimes the elves don't bake things nicely. The cake tastes just fine, though each of them only manages one piece before deciding it's far too sweet. Nearby, a small collection of presents sits waiting. Evan and Barty gathered them up this morning and refused to let Regulus see a single one. They are meant to be surprises, Barty had scolded, holding the packages hostage. You can't know who sent what, or it's cheating. They are just names. Sure, but then you will start making guesses and getting your hopes up. Dangerous stuff, that. Regulus doesn't tell Barty his hopes are already up. Is one of the present from James? They haven't spoken at all since the Quidditch party. He only realized the other day that it's been a month, no, over a month since that awful night. How many kisses has James had since then? The thought alone makes his throat itch. Eventually, Barty and Evan grow bored of torturing him and hand over the presents. Regulus does his level best to open them patiently, even though he's dying to find the one from James. He's not very lucky in his picks. First one up is Sirius's, a magpie's jersey, a bunch of new and Joe Credence socks, and hide and broom cleaning kit. Effie and Monty's gift is a muggle Sirius Regulus eyed last summer while visiting a bookshop with Monty. The last book just came out, the note attached tells him in Monty's jagged scroll. Enjoy them. Pandora gives him a handmade bracelet with a protective charm. To keep you steady on your broom, she explains, clapping her hands in front of her from sheer excitement. Just in case something happens, the pros play harder, you can never be too prepared. Evan and Barty's gift makes him roll his eyes. It's a male Quidditch calendar, except all of the models are almost naked or entirely nude. Not a single one is an actual professional player. Since you can't have your preferred player, Evans says, wiggling his brows, we thought this would at least be a decent enough stand-in. I hate you, Regulus deadpans. The tips of his ears burn. Sure, but now you can look at... Ah, yes. Julie's jacket and loaded keeper. All next month. Isn't that nice? Regulus scolds to hide the smile blooming on his face. Barty and Evan always find a way to make him laugh, even when he's not feeling up to it. After a moment, Regulus glances at Pandora, who's been dutifully doling out the presents, and freezes. She's sitting there empty-handed, that means. Swallowing, Regulus asks, "Anything else?" "Anything from James?" Pandora's frown is deeper than Regulus has ever seen it. She reaches next to her, picks up something square and waves it in front of him with a hesitant hand. Just this. It's a small envelope, unassuming. On the back is his name, written in James's looping scroll. His heart is in his throat. He wishes the three of them weren't here in the room. He's so glad they are here. He doesn't know what he feels anymore when he opens the envelope carefully. His hands shake, though he's sure he's the only one who notices. The leftover taste of chocolate cake is sour on his tongue now. Inside the envelope is a small card. There's nothing special about it. Nothing written in it but a dry "Happy Birthday" next to the punchline to a bad joke. At the bottom it's signed James. Regulus stares at it, white noise between his ears. James has always gone out of his way to get him thoughtful gifts. Even when he got James something unbelievably lame, James still showed up with the most incredible thing next holiday. He's the most thoughtful person Regulus knows, and he never misses when it comes to presents. Especially not Regulus's. He always gets Regulus something special. The first edition of Wuthering Heights on his nightstand feels like a fifth person in the room. I have to... Regulus gets to his feet and sprints to the door. He barely makes it to the bathroom before the tickle becomes a scratch, becomes a violent shredding of his throat. Tears prick the corners of his eyes. He feels rotten, like the deepest part of himself are morphing into the wrong shapes. His lungs burn, a hot fire scorching through them. He coughs and coughs and coughs, each one worse than the last, until finally it falls from his lips. A full flower, there in the sink basin. Purple petals spotted with white and yellow coral were winkling at him like the sun behind a cloud. "Fuck," Regulus whispers, staring at it. The 5-petaled perfection of it mocks him. "Look at me," it says. "Look at this part of you that's so pretty, while the rest of you rots in regret and shame." He wants to take it in his hand and crush it, ruin it, destroy it, watch it turn to dust and wash it down the sink. He wants to do to it what he wishes he could do to his feelings for James. His feelings for... No. Regulus goes completely still, hands gripping the sink so hard he might crack it in half. This panic is cold like ice spreading over a lake in the dead of a winter. It's unstoppable, but unhurried. A stone dropped, sending ripples of horrifying realization from his head all the way to his toes. It can't be. Surely not. Impossible. But think, Regulus Black, think. When did he cough the first petal? When did it come? His fingers dig into the basin, his knuckles white and aching as the gears in his head turn and turn and turn. When? When did the first appear? There have been so many, all of them as painful and awful as the last, but the first? When was that? It takes him a moment to sift through his memories, but when he finds it, the revelation hits him harder than a bludger ever could. The day not only Sirius moved out, but James. The others? When were all the others? Come on, he mutters, squeezing his eyes shut. His muscles have seized up. He's rooted to the spot. He's so close to figuring it out he can taste it mixed with the blood on his tongue. Think, you idiot, think! He remembers coughing one up the night James stayed with him in the bathroom. He remembers the flood of them the night he saw James kiss Raphael. He remembers the first full flower the night he met James's gaze across the crowded room, his lips still on Jordan's. And even before that, he remembers the petals getting worse. He remembers them worse after learning about Raphael from Sirius. A petal coughed up for each letter James sent. Oh, this. Regulus could laugh. He does, in fact. It bubbles out of him, hysterical and disbelieving. He opens his eyes and stares at the full flower in the sinked basin. The crushing disappointment and hurt because James sent him a simple card but didn't even bother to write a message. Nothing to congratulate him. Nothing to show he cares. All he gets is a flower, and heartache so deep it's a physical hurt. Because Regulus has already lost him. He may never have had him, but now there's no chance at all. Not even a sliver of it. Regulus made sure of that when he kissed Jordan. He made sure of it when he stopped answering James's letters. Leave me alone, his actions said. Let me go. Did James ever know about Regulus's feelings for him? Did he ever wonder why Regulus blushed clear to the tips of his ears at even the slightest bit of praise? Did he ever question why Regulus went out of his way to attend every Gryffindor Quidditch game and sit in stands of red and gold? Sure, he could excuse it away because Sirius was on the team too. But did James really think Regulus would do all of that only for Sirius? Of course he did, Regulus whispers, reaching for the flower, because you never gave him a reason to believe anything otherwise. The truth of it all makes him feel worse than he's felt in weeks, months even. He's coughing up flowers because of James, and he has no idea what it means or how to make it stop.